Hi class, in this video we're going to be talking about how to find the area of a square, rectangle, parallelogram, and triangle. So let's start with a square. So to find the area of a square, I'm just going to compute side times side. So in this case here, my two sides are going to be 2 centimeters and 2 centimeters. Now I also called this the length and the width, but especially for a square, since all sides are the same, you can just call both of these side and side if you like. Now 2 times 2 is going to be equal to 4. So my area should be 4 centimeters squared. Now since area is defined as the shaded region, one little square here is worth 1 centimeter squared. So since I have 4 little squares here, the whole thing is worth 4 centimeters squared. And I can do this because I'm plotting this onto a grid. If you don't have a grid, you just have to take the sides and multiply them together. Okay, to find the area of a rectangle, I just take my length and I times it by my width. I can alternatively also call this my base and my height. Now in this case, my length is 3 and my width is 2. So 3 times 2 is going to be equal to 6 centimeters squared. And this does match up with the grid because one little square is worth 1 centimeter squared, and I have 6 of them here. So my answer should be 6 centimeters squared. Now again, I just changed the labeling. So here I called this my base instead of my length, and I called this my height instead of my width. Now for base and height, they always form a 90-degree angle between them. Now in this case, I just compute base times height, as you can see here. So 5 times 2 is going to be equal to 10 centimeters squared. Okay, now we're going to move on to parallelograms. First things first, recall that the area of a rectangle is base times height. So I have my base here, which is 10, and my height, which is 4. So 4 times 10 is going to be equal to 40 centimeters squared. Now, what happens if I cut off a corner here and just move it across to turn it into a parallelogram? Does my area change? No, because my area is defined as the shaded region, and the shaded region didn't change. It just sort of moved over. So that means that if the area stayed the same, the area of a parallelogram is also going to be base times height. So it's also going to be 40 centimeters squared. So here's the formula here. Base times height is the area of a parallelogram. However, do recall that if this is my height, let's say, and this is my base and height always have to form a 90-degree angle. And in this case, it does form a 90-degree angle if I let this be the base. And let's say the height is just right here. It forms a 90-degree angle. And I can just kind of move the height. Okay, let's go over some examples. So again, the area of a parallelogram is base times height, and it always has to form a right angle. So in this case here, for my first example, it looks like my base is going to be 10, and my height would be 5 because they would form a right angle. Okay, great. Now 14 is just too long to be my base. It extends too far. And 6 is slanted, so that can't be my height. So these are just there to confuse you. So all I have to do to find my area here is just do 10 times 5. 10 being my base, 5 being my height. And if I do that, I get the answer of 50 centimeters squared. Now for my second example here, looks like my base is 4. And in this case, my height's going to be 7. 9 is just there to confuse you, so we can cross that out. And now we just compute base times height. So in this case here, I have base is 4 times my height, which is 7. So my answer should be 28 centimeters squared. Okay, now before we talk about how to find the area of a triangle, let's just consider the following. So in this case here, I have a square. Now to find the area of a square, I just take side times side. So 4 times 4 is going to be 16 centimeters squared, right? So let's write that down. 4 times 4 is 16 centimeters squared. And this is for a square, right? For a square. Okay, great. Now what happens if I cut this square in half? What's the area now? Well, the new area is going to be half of that now. It's just going to be 8 centimeters squared. Exactly half of 16 because I just cut it in half. What's the new shape now? Triangle, right? So the new shape is going to be a triangle. Okay. Now let's go over another example. What is the area of this rectangle? So recall that the area of a rectangle is going to be base times height. So in this case, it's going to be 6 times 3. So 6 times 3 is going to be equal to 18. So that's my area right here, 18 centimeters squared. Now what happens if I also cut this in half? It looks like the new shape is now also a triangle, and my new area should just be half of 18. So my new area should be just 9 centimeters squared. Do we notice the pattern here? It seems like for a square and a rectangle, if I cut it in half to form a triangle, my area is just halved. Okay, let's say we start with a rectangle here. 4 times 6 is 24, and that gets me my area for the rectangle. But what happens now if I cut these pieces off? What shape do I have now? A triangle. And what's my new area? 12 centimeters squared, because I halved 24. And these are 4 equal pieces. Okay, what about this shape here? This is a rectangle, which is also 24 centimeters squared. I cut off these shapes, but it looks like this is equal to this. This is equal to this. These are still exactly half. So my new area is, once again, just 12 centimeters squared. Equal areas, equal areas. Okay, so if that's the case, the area here, 4 times 8, originally is 32. But if I have it, I should get 16 centimeters squared. And this one here was 6 times 4. So if I did 6 times 4 and then I divide it by 2, I should get 12 centimeters squared. And for this shape here, it was originally a rectangle. 6 times 5 is 30. However, if I divide it by 2, I'm going to get 15 centimeters squared. Okay, so it looks like the formula for my triangle, or any triangle, is just going to be base times height divided by 2. So it's either base times height times a half or base times height divided by 2. You pick. As long as you know that the base and the height will always form a right angle, just like for a parallelogram, you can use that fact to identify which is your base in a triangle and which is your height. Now let's go over an example. What is the area of this shape? So this is a triangle, so it's going to be base times height divided by 2, or base times height times a half. Now in this case, what's my base? Looks like my base is going to be 5, because on the bottom here. It looks like my height's going to be 6, because they form a right angle, right? So if I just move this 6 all the way here instead, so that it's inside the triangle, notice they just form a right angle. So 5 times 6 divided by 2 should be my answer. The 9 here is just there to confuse you. So I'm going to have 5 times 6, which is 30, and 30 divided by 2, or times a half, would be equal to 15 centimeters squared.